Accidental Marriage by Shadina. Chapter 14. Ed had known he had been right about his commanding officer. All the signs had been there, at least according to that book he read on it. So, Roy wasn't a girl. The signs, for the most part, had been the same. That was a secret he was going to take to his grave. Roy was to never know that he had learned such things from a book, not when the man had so much first-hand experience. Of course, for someone who has had so much, you'd think he wouldn't be so stupid about how he felt and do the whole denial thing, which was a complete waste of time. He smirked a bit, remembering that kiss. It had just been one. According to Chapter 13, don't give in to all her demands right away. Make her wait on some. Long for it. Keep her on her toes. This will keep her interested. It'll keep the mystery going. Ed flipped through the chapter. How do you know when to give in and when not to? His head jerked up when he heard the familiar firm voice of Lieutenant Hawkeye. He smirked, remembering that Riza had promised to return and bring the bastard his paperwork. He quickly got off the bed, leaving the book to get lost amongst the bedding. He wanted to see the bastard's face upon receiving the hated paperwork. He stomped down the stairs, gaining both the lieutenant's and the colonel's attention. On the colonel's lap was healthy-looking stacks of papers for him to sign. The dark-haired man's lips pressed tightly into a frown, pleasing Ed all the more.
Find something amusing.
Ed wondered if Roy was cranky from the paperwork or because Ed didn't give in to him yesterday. He hoped for the latter. Ed ignored it, though. "Good morning, Lieutenant," he said cheerfully. Riza returned the smile. "Edward?" "How much did you give him?" "The normal amount, and some that I found under the couch cushions, and under the couch itself, but I'll be bringing the rest on the other days,"
she assured them both, not that it would make Roy feel any better. Roy groaned audibly, which caused Ed to snicker. He shot the golden-haired individual a glare. "Well, I'm going to eat some breakfast," he announced. "What about me?"
Roy asked. "What, are you helpless now?" Roy raised his eyebrows. All right, I'll make eggs." Ed gave in. Riza seemed to think that was her cue to leave. "I'll be back tomorrow to pick those up and give the next stack," she promised. Roy and Ed were at the table, Ed eating the eggs he had made for them, Roy adding salt and pepper to them. Blondes didn't believe in salt and pepper either, it seemed. Ed looked over at Roy. "Is that really the amount you're given every day?" Mustang nodded and swallowed what was in his mouth.
"It's a relatively normal stack. Sometimes there's less, sometimes there's more. Depends on what day of the month it is and how many personnel I have returning from missions."
Honestly, Ed had never considered Mustang's job beyond what it did for him. He supposed it made sense that Roy would send more than just him out on missions. He couldn't have been the only one. "What are the papers about?" He took a bite of his toast. Roy looked at him curiously.
"Building maintenance, for the most part. Typically the others take care of most of it, but there are some items that require my attention, and much like I do with you, I have field personnel and alchemists that report in to me or send their reports."
He paused and studied Ed for a moment.
"Why the sudden interest in my job?"
"Show interest in her work and hobbies. Ask questions about them so you get a better feel of what they are. Be adventurous and try some out." "Want some help?" he offered, ignoring the question.
"If someone else could do this, then I'd have someone else doing this,"
he pointed out. "I'm just trying to help, bastard." His face a bit red from embarrassment, but was trying to hide it with anger.
"All right, if you want to help."
He suddenly changed his tune, much to Ed's uncertainty. Ed was ready to go cross-eyed. "I thought you said if it was important, it came to you."
"This is important,"
Roy said, stretched out on the couch. It took some time to get him there, but he was glad they managed. It was more comfortable for him. "How is changing toilet paper brand important?" Ed asked flatly. He hoped to get some military secrets out of this. Instead, he was reading Roy's paperwork aloud, and it was about changing toilet paper to more eco-friendly paper. The colonel had made himself out to be really important. At least that's how Ed felt. Though obviously, if he was dealing with toilet paper, he wasn't that important.
"That's a good question. Do you like the fact that we have toilet paper for your use?"
"You know what I mean, bastard?" Roy rolled his eyes.
"Think about this. Depending on the brand they're recommending, it might be, say, $1 more or $1 less. Using the example of $1 more, we have to look at what kind of brand it is. Is it more comfortable or is it more eco-friendly? If it's more eco-friendly, then does it just dissolve better, which might help with plumbing costs, or is it simply made of recycled material? Either way, it could help with public relations by saying we're doing our part to help the environment. Not that the military actually cares about the environment, that's hardly the point. However, unless there's proof that it'll help cut costs in plumbing, I'd have to find the money to pay for it, because if each pack is $1 more, and we consider all of the bathrooms in Central HQ, and some of our satellite stations at each stall for every day, eventually getting that to a yearly amount. That could easily be $1,000 or more we're looking at spending extra. I need to find where I could pull that amount of money should I deem it worth it. Of course, if the opposite was true, and it was a few cents cheaper, then I look at how much would actually save us in a year's time and per month. If it's only $50 a year, then what would I do with so little money? So there would be no reason to change it. If it was a larger sum, then I would have to figure out where to place the extra money, so I'd have to look at all the other projects and upkeep bills that we have to see if we've cut back somewhere that we can now add this extra money into.
Ed blinked. All that over a toilet paper brand? That caused Roy to laugh.
Yes, Edward, all that over a toilet paper brand. Now finish reading it to me so I can figure out if I even want to look into this or simply deny the request.
He said, closing his eyes. Ed continued, and Roy ended up denying the request outright, and he went on to others. He could quickly see why Roy hated paperwork so much. It was dry and very dull. Hell, he hated it now and wished he never offered to help. But what other things did Roy do with his time? Date girls? Have sex? Definitely wasn't going to ask the details about those, nor was he going to try and engage in those activities with the bastard. He felt some heat rise up in his cheeks due to the last idea.
What are you thinking about?
Roy asked, smirking as if he knew exactly what was going on in Ed's head. Ed frowned. Nothing, he snapped, the heat quickly leaving his face. I don't want to do this anymore, he announced and dropped the papers onto Roy's stomach. Roy grunted and frowned.
You said you wanted to help me.
Yes, and now I don't want to help anymore, Ed told him, crossing his arms over his chest, trying to figure out what to do. He got an idea and suddenly went up to his room, ignoring Roy's calls to him, wondering what had suddenly gotten into him. He picked up his book and flipped through the chapters, found one, and started reading it, his eyes scanning the book quickly, trying to find something that needed to be done next. He closed the book as he thought about what he had just read. Basically, it said to teach him something. What could he possibly teach Mustang, though? He thought about sparring, but Roy couldn't do that right now. Still, he would enjoy teaching the bastard that later. He'd get to put his fist in his face. But what to do now? The bastard already knew alchemy. Well, flame alchemy, anyway. There was that big library, though. Perhaps they could just read a few books or something. He got up and went to go check the library and pull some books he found interesting and brought them back to the living room to an unhappy bastard. What's wrong with you? He asked him as he dropped down into the seat with the books on his lap.
You left me here and didn't bother making sure I had everything before you took off,
he said. Ed blinked. Oh, he shrugged it off. I brought you some books to read.
I have paperwork.
Ed gave him a bland look. We both know you have no real intention on doing it either. You just wanted to torment me with it.
What books do you have?
He held out his hand for one. Ed handed him one. Just some I haven't read before. Roy took the thick leather-bound book.
You mean you haven't read all the books in the world pertaining to alchemy? I'm shocked.
Shut up! Ed snapped. It was probably a good thing that Hawkeye came over that night with food to make the two men. When she walked in with her key that Ed created for her, she saw the two boys deep in a heated conversation over something that she could actually care less about. She went to the kitchen and went about making a soup for them. She could tell by the dishes in the sink that lunch had never been made or eaten, so she was glad that she had brought plenty of extra meat and vegetables. The soup was completed and served, and Riza went to get the two boys. Dinner, she said, looking at them half amused.
When did you get here?
Roy managed to ask. Around 2 hours ago, sir, she informed him.
Right, of course. Edward, come here and help me.
He ordered the other male. Always ordering me around, he muttered, but went to help Roy into the wheelchair.
Damn it, Ed,
yelled Roy when his knee was jarred.
Try being more gentle.
You're the one that moved your leg like that, Ed argued. Just help me, Roy demanded through gritted teeth. I am! Riza walked in. Stop arguing. The soup is getting cold. The two of them quietly worked together and got them both to the long table. Roy had to stifle a sigh over the watery soup. Tomorrow, they're ordering in. That was all there was to it. He'd inform his lieutenant of that, too. He looked around the table and saw Ed eating quickly and Riza eating in a more regulated pace, and his mouth twitched up. It was nice having company over. Such a large house needed more people in it, even enough to continue eating bland food. Ed noticed Roy's slow pace. "What? Food not good enough for you?"
Roy raised his eyebrows. "Just because I don't guzzle my food down doesn't mean I don't find it worth eating,"
he informed him. "Sir, did you get any of your paperwork done?" the female officer asked him. Roy mentally cursed.
"I did."
This was true. It wasn't a lot, but she asked about any paperwork. Riza seemed to read his mind, however. "You realize I'm giving you more tomorrow, right?"
"Of course,"
Roy assured her.
"and the stack will be completed by the time you come tomorrow. Maybe you'd also be so kind as to stop by the sandwich shop and pick up some lunches for the three of us. My treat."
He offered her a smile in hopes of charming her, not that it ever worked in the past. "I'll consider it," she told him, "if I have the time." Roy nodded his head. That was as close to a sure as he was going to get when dealing with her. It wasn't long when Hawkeye left, and Roy remained at the table doing his paperwork. Ed watched him from over his book, but the dark-haired man didn't seem to notice. Ed got up off the couch and went to get some water and grabbed another glass for Roy, figuring he'd probably be thirsty too. When he put the glass down, Roy noticed and went to mutter a thank you, but was silenced when Ed leaned over and kissed him again. It startled him, having not expected it, and Ed showing no real indication that he had wanted to ever kiss him again since their kiss over the chessboard. Of course, Ed had always been a bit unpredictable, though Roy couldn't help but wonder if there was something else guiding Ed to be a bit more mysterious? That wasn't really the right word, but at the moment his thought process was a bit jumbled. Ed pulled back and licked his lips and met his eyes with the dark slanted ones of his companion. He smirked, and that made Ed return it with one of his own. He leaned down and kissed him again, and Roy moved as best he could to make it easier on them. Roy was hoping there were a few promises in those kisses that'll be enacted before the night was through. They pulled apart to breathe, and Roy was certainly ready to do some more, but Ed spoke. "Finish your paperwork, bastard."